And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Valley of the Judged. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me, sorry, dry mouth. I have two of my good brothers and sisters here in the monastery. We have the man who has currently exercised his ghosts and had half a face to prove it. Good brother Sig.
Not do it again too. It's like the fourth or fifth freaking thing I've killed today or this year.
Why did you say I'd do it again too if it wasn't for you, for those meddling kids?
No, that's a different case.
Okay, fine.
And the lady who is bringing occasional bits of gremlin energy, good sister Tabby.
I'm too tired to bring a more than occasional, but we'll make it. We'll make it work.
So
Yes, occasional.
Occasional gremlin energy that is definitely not going to be amplified by this very sugary southern tea.
But we are back with the 3-in-1 rule, which means tonight is going to be a one-shot night. I did speak internally that until further notice, one-shots are double shots. The big reason for that is to allow us to cover more material. And that starts with this one, since when we have to recover quick starts, or some of those episodes might be less than an hour, so this is a way to bump up the time as well as cover more games. So everybody wins.
Yay!
So for the first one, wrapped up last week, but we're going to be looking at the Invincible TTRPG, or rather, its Quickstart. Now, this is coming to us through Free League, which, yes, means it is using the Year Zero engine.
And Free League does a lot of good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Whether as a direct developer or as a publisher. And I know some might say, don't you glaze the Year Zero system a bit much? I'm like, I'll stop doing that when they put out a bad game with it. But we just got the second edition of the Alien RPG, which I have been looking at the side. We did get Blade Runner. There's also Coriolis. And for Forbidden Lands, you also have the OG, which is Mutant Year Zero. Tales from the Loop and the Electric State. The third edition of Twilight 2000 and Vaesen. Along with a handful of others. And I know I picked on the Walking Dead RPG, but that was mostly the fact that I felt it came out a few years too late. You know, because that came out about 2 years ago. And The Walking Dead is nowhere near the pop culture powerhouse that it was a few years ago.
Or back when the comics were first a thing, like years and years ago.
Mm-hmm. And one of the big reasons I wanted to tackle this is with a lot of the first-party Year Zero entries, they're not exactly high-powered fantasies. You know, Alien is, of course, Alien. Even if you have the power of colonial marines, we see that they are that a one-on-one fight with a colonial marine and a xenomorph is not going to go well for the marine, even if they are armed with something like a smart gun. You have Blade Runner, which is, well, Blade Runner. Coriolis, which I covered the first edition of, which is Lawrence of Arabia in space. Forbidden Lands is more of a dark fantasy. Mutant Year Zero is a post-apocalypse. Tales from the Loop and the Electric State are more of weird science fiction. I have not seen the TV shows for either. I heard the Electric State was bad. And Twilight 2000 is more of a military post-apocalypse, kind of. And Vaesen is a Nordic folk horror RPG. The pattern you're seeing with all of these is that they are not exactly high-powered affairs. A Supers, like Invincible, is going to be a high-powered affair. So that's kind of the reason why I wanted to delve into this. And especially now, since one of the stretch goals for the Kickstarter was taking the Supers rules in Invincible and putting them on Free League's open license. Because, yeah, of course they have an open license, like everybody else did when the OGL fiasco hit a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't even using the open gaming license much, or didn't need to. And their response was, we're already doing third-party support as it was. We're just making it more official with a proper license.
Right.
They already had a powered by Year Zero imprint where third-party folks could do expansions to their various games. I've got a few of those third-party expansions for Alien, for instance. This just made it so that people could make their own, and there have been a few already. One of them I already covered, which is Eldritch Automata, which is a giant send-up to the likes of Evangelion and Pacific Rim. There's also Titan Effect Zero, which is a Year Zero take on Titan Effect. Titan Effect started as a... well, it originally was a Mutants and Masterminds thing, though it was never published as that. It was originally published as a Savage Worlds setting, and now it's shifting into that. And I've had a long back and forth with its designer, Christian Nome. The best way I can describe Titan Effect? X-Men meets Metal Gear Solid.
Nice.
Okay.
Obviously, we're going through the Quickstart for Invincible. The Quickstart is pretty light. It's only 36 pages. There were some additional PDFs that covered things like reference cards, a map, some pre-gens, a quick reference for the rules, and standees that you could print out. So the Quickstart is more like a box set, just without the, well, box. Well, you do have that option if you want a printed version.
Mm-hmm.
And I see, hi there, Hydra, hi there, Amov and Dragon. I see you guys in the chat. Amov really wanted me to do the title card stinger gag, and I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not upending a bunch of my setup on OBS just for one gag. But
I mean, you could do an entire, like, just add yourself a different scene listing on it, and do it that way.
For something I'm only going to do once, it's not worth it.
Dang.
But first off, we get chapter 1, You Might Be Invincible, which is going to what it's set up. The Quickstart came out before the proper Kickstarter. And since it's talking about using a fistful of six-sided dice, as well as 10 cards numbered 1 to 10, so playing cards just take out the face cards, but keep the aces. And this is aces low. It's clear that they're using the OG version of this system. There are two forms in which the Year Zero engine can take place. One of them is something that's a more recent thing. The standard one is D6s, and you only care about how many sixes you roll. There is a more recent variant that I think the first version of it that I saw was in Twilight 2000, which is a 2-dice setup not far removed from what you'd see in stuff like Savage Worlds. You know, the idea being you have your attribute and you have your attribute level, which is going to be a die size from D6 to D12, and your skill level, which is going to be a similar thing.
Mhm.
And you are rolling both. And and let me check if it was still doing that rule of 4, because it has been a few months since I've looked into that one. But going to it. I do apologize for the bit of silence. I'm trying to double check something so that I don't sound like I'm talking out of my ass.
No worries.
It's fine.
But
My PDF doesn't like me right now, so.
I was going over the what is this game, and I was reading about the story of Invincible. I'm like, oh, that sounds pretty cool, actually.
So,
what is this game, do you ask? Oh, nope, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. But
Sure, why my computer really does not like this PDF.
which is odd because it's a standard fare PDF. So
It was okay until I put it on 2-page, and now once I put it on 1 page, it was fine again.
I think it's because of the way this thing is formatted, it doesn't like to do the 2-page format for whatever reason.
It just was being weird on me.
that is a possibility, but it's one that obviously is out of my control.
Oh yeah, it's not your fault. I was just like, okay. I just closed it out and opened it back up. Maybe it'll be happier now.
Mm-hmm. So, basically for the 2-die setup, if any of the die roll a 6 or higher, it's a success. If any of the die roll a 10 or higher, it's 2 successes. That's how the 2-die setup works. Not exactly the rule of 4 that's in Savage Worlds, but not far off. And I have seen some people who were trying to do more low-powered stuff with Savage Worlds try it. But it looks like Invincible here is doing the 6-sided dice approach. Which is certainly fair, because everybody's got some 6-sided dice somewhere. But then we go into what is this game based on the comic series. It is amusing that they are using more stuff from the comic series than from the comic book than from the TV show. And then going into the usual what is a role-playing game, which is something we don't need to go into. I do like the fact that they talk about the 3 types of scenes: briefings, action scenes, and social scenes. It's always nice when a game presents a bit of structure. But then we get into superheroes proper. Obviously, we have the whole thing with the character sheet. But the first part is your role. And when I look at these roles, I end up thinking, was somebody a fan of City of Heroes?
No, right? Because a lot of these look very familiar.
So, the role has no mechanical effect, but it can have an influence on how you play. The roles we have are Blaster, you excel at dealing attacks from a distance. Brains, you adapt to situations by using cunning and strategy. Brawn, you are a physical force that relishes surviving and delivering damage. Controller, you're a master of hindering enemies, assisting allies, and managing the battlefield. Defender, you're a protector that safeguards allies and engages enemies on the front lines. Leader, you guide and support your allies with coordination, tactics, will, or inspiration. Striker, you're a relentless force in close combat that balances strength and mobility. And Wildcard, you're adaptable and unpredictable, overcoming challenges with your versatility.
Hey, look, it's probably me.
I have a feeling the game is implying that playing wildcard is going to be more of a higher floor. But
Yes.
you have 6 attributes, 3 physical, 3 mental. Each attribute is rated from 1 to 12. So the thing is, 1 is poor, 12 is invincible. The average is 2. And the 6 ability scores we have are fighting, so hand-to-hand combat technique, agility, strength, reason, intuition, and presence. Your attributes are used when you roll dice, as well as determining damage and stress thresholds before you become broken. We'll get to that later on. Your base damage for Slugfest attack is equal to half your strength score rounded up. That'll be something else we get into later. So, your health is the sum of fighting, agility, and strength divided by 2, rounded up. And obviously it can be further modified, but that's your baseline. Your resolve, which is reduced whenever you take stress damage, is the sum of your reason, intuition, and presence scores divided by 2, rounding up. So you have your physical damage and your mental damage. Then we have powers. So the full core rulebook will have a lot more powers, but we have a few in the pre-gens. Some powers have levels. For now, suffice to say that a major power is more powerful than a basic power, and a massive power is even more powerful. Some powers have boosts, which is a way to modify their effects. And each power has a power source that describes where it comes from and helps you roleplay it. Then we have talents and drawbacks. These are tricks, moves, and minor abilities that give you an edge. Drawbacks are self-explanatory. And each of them is going to be on the pre-gen sheet. There's going to be more. And I know one might say, with how talents and drawbacks usually work, couldn't somebody end up min-maxing through the point setup? If this is working the way other Year Zero games have, no. You start, because in a lot of them, you start out with one talent, you start out with it, you get a drawback, and that's it. There's no point value associated with them. Now you can spend XP usually to buy off drawbacks, but you're not doing that at the start. But then we have personal stuff. So occupation, self-explanatory. Personality, self-explanatory. Drive is the reason why you expose yourself to the dangers and challenges. Flaw is, the weakness that you have, and this isn't. I don't think the weakness is meant to be, say, a physical weakness. Like Superman and Kryptonite, but more of a psychological one. Something that will get you into trouble. And you have each hero has at least one key relationship. Someone that plays a big role in your particular life, and these are often used in social scenes. Then we have resources and gear. I like that they state this is not a game about collecting loot or managing equipment, but some characters use gadgets, technology, or weapons as part of their powers. Beyond this, your hero also has a resources score that reflects your standard of living, that you can use to acquire equipment outside of any gear related to powers. I always find it funny how some people really get up in arms about the idea of these sort of resources being abstracted. As if because of the fact that items are there, we need to be using encumbrance rules.
Yeah, I don't use those as a general rule.
I don't use those, and sometimes I end up using the usage die. system that's from the Black Hack.
Mhm.
Instead of tracking ammo. I feel like that sort of hardcore resource management, it certainly has its place, but the idea that it has to be a default, I don't agree with one bit. That's some design by gospel shit, and you know how I feel about that.
Yep.
So, you also have a reputation stat, which is meant to represent the impact you're having as a superhero. And Dragon says, what if I want a trophy room? Then you're not, unless you're carrying a trophy room around, I don't see the point. And if you are carrying a trophy room around, you've got bigger problems.
More importantly, why?
I mean, it could be in my bag. You know, bigger on the inside. I just have a box. It's my trophy room.
That's not a room.
I mean, it could be. I could be carrying around a room. But it's a box.
You're not that good at clothing. I would hate to
Just
see.
saying, could be a box.
Tabby, I would hate to see you play poker. Unless I'm there. In that case, I'd love it. Because it's going to be the easiest payday of my life.
Well, says you.
Oh god, no, none of that, you two.
Yeah, but
I will get a hose.
when it comes to rolling dice, you are rolling d6s. It is the standard attribute plus skill. You need to roll at least 1 6. There are custom dice that the game has that replaces 1s and 6s with in-universe symbols. But as a general rule, 1s and 6s are the only die results you will care about. You want 6s, you don't want 1s.
Got it.
Full stop. Which,
sounds simple enough.
in that regard, I think makes the Year Zero a very accessible system, even for newcomers. It's like, can you roll d6s? Yes. Do you know what a boxcar is? Yes. Do you know what snake eyes are? Yes. You're good. Now, if you roll more than 1 6 in a skill roll, you can achieve a stunt. This is basically you doing something with an extra degree of success. In other words, if you just roll 1 6, you succeed, but it's a bare minimum success. Now, some attacks will have specific stunts associated with them, and for things that aren't attacks, it's essentially putting another bullet point on how well you did something. They give a few examples here. You show off, you do it quickly, you do it quietly, you achieve some additional effect. And as a general rule, when it comes to these sort of things, I apply it that it's 1 stunt. In this case, it would be 1 stunt per 6. And rolling multiple 6s in a d6 pool is not going to be easy. Like, let's say, since 2 is the average, let's say you're rolling 4d6 for a roll. So in order to get full boxcars out of that, the odds are 0.08%. Now, any dice isn't going to tell me the odds when it comes to the whole rolling 1s or rolling 6s, because it only cares about these sums, which isn't going to be all that important here. And I can't say just what would be the odds of a 4, because you could get that in a bunch of different ways. But Obviously, if you roll no sixes, it's a failure. If you fail, or if you just want to get more sixes, you can try and push a roll.
So you can do what you can do in Call of Cthulhu.
If you declare a push, you take all the die that didn't show a 1 or a 6, roll them again. All dice count after the reroll, including the ones that you didn't. For each one, you take 1 point of stress. And unless something says otherwise, you can only push a roll once.
Yep.
And you can't push rolls for passive stuff. But sometimes you might get roll modifiers that's just going to be +2 or -2 dice standard fare. Equipment can modify the roll in this manner. There are some versions of the Year Zero engine that suggest using different colored dice to represent attributes, skills, and gear. I don't think we're going to be doing that here, especially since the custom dice that were shown were all one color. And if I'm being honest, I never did that personally because that's a bit of an ass to have people use specific colored dice. But you can get help from another person, which is going to give you +1 to a roll. And of course, there are opposed rolls, which is basically roll more sixes than your adversary does.
Mm-hmm.
Although with opposed rolls, only the active party can push it.
Push only on your own turn.
Oh yeah. And then we get into maps and zones. This is not doing grid combat. This is more about broad areas more than anything else, because I think doing grid combat with a superhero game would kind of be counterintuitive. You think about how hero fights work in any superhero media you've seen, and imagine doing that on a grid of 5-foot squares.
Yeah, no, that would be too much of a headache.
And you do have action maps within the Quickstart here to kind of track positioning, but it is more concerned with zones than with actual grids. Now, a zone is supposed to be an area that's 100 feet wide, but it can be a larger area or a smaller area, depends on context. And distance is regarded in zones. So whether you're in the same zone, one zone distance, or the like, if you're in the same zone, the distance is 0 zones. We also have rules for altitude, which we have 3 levels of altitude. Elevated, so you're in flight, but you're still on the planet. Sky high, you're up in the clouds. If you're at sky high altitude, you're removed from the action map and are considered to always be in the same zone. You can only attack characters who are also sky high, even by ranged weapons. And in orbit, self-explanatory there. You need some sort of spacesuit or a life support power to be up here, otherwise you're dead.
Don't tell Goku that.
Space is a vacuum. And if you're in orbit, you're removed from the action map and considered in the same zone. You cannot be attacked by characters at other altitudes when you're in orbit. Of course, you can have a similar thing with vertical zones when it comes to large buildings. But then we get to rounds and initiative. You are not rolling for initiative. Much like in Savage Worlds, you're drawing for it. Because 10 cards numbered 1 to 10 are used. You can use ordinary playing cards, removing the face cards and counting aces as 1. As I mentioned, ace is low. For those who don't play enough card games, anytime someone says ace is high, it means that an ace is treated as an 11.
Mm-hmm.
Some games do both. But each participant in a fight draws a random card, and the GM draws cards for the NPCs. The number of the card becomes the order in which you act. Card 1 acts first, then 2, then 3, then 4, you get the idea. And obviously once you've drawn initiative, everybody has to make sure that their card is showing. Which you can take. If you have things that let you take more than one turn, you draw one more card for each. This also means you cannot take multiple actions in the same initiative count, I guess. But you do have, instead of rolling for initiative, you can potentially roll for intuition if you're dealing with a surprise attack. In a surprise attack, whoever is being surprised rolls intuition. This is a passive roll, so it can't be pushed. Anyone who fails the roll automatically gets the highest initiative card at the first round.
Ooh, boy.
It says, for example, if 3 heroes fail their initiative card, they get the 8, 9, and 10 cards distributed randomly, and then everyone else draws the cards randomly as normal. Because remember, surprise attack means free round, and then it goes to normal initiative. Of course, you can hold your action if you so choose, or do interrupts. Standard fare there.
Yep.
But as far as the action economy, you can either do a full action and a quick action, or 2 quick actions. And you can use your full action to give orders to somebody. It is a presence roll if you do, and for every 6 that you roll, they get 1 more die to roll later in that same round. But only for carrying out that order, and they can't hoard it. If they don't use it the round they got it, they lose it. Which I'd say is a nice touch.
Yeah, keeps people from hoarding stuff.
And then we have a list of actions and the attributes that each of them uses. I do like the fact that we have different types of attacks, not just melee and range, but we have slugfest, charge, and shooting. As well as quick actions for things like blocking a slugfest attack or picking up an item, or that action banter is a presence roll. But
so this is where they got the idea to put banter in Devil May Cry 5. I mean, don't get me wrong, that the acting and performances in that game are absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
But that's my first thought when I see the action banter.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it does keep you motivated.
Oh, for fuck's sake, no.
But then we have movement. So ground movement is going between zones. Vertical movement is going between elevations. We've already talked about that. If you fall from an elevation, it inflicts d6 points of damage. So falling from elevated, you take d6 damage. Falling from sky high, 2d6. You can roll for agility. This isn't an action, so you can't push it. Each 6 you roll reduces the damage by 1. If there's anything to grab onto on the way down, a success in the agility roll will negate the damage completely. Some powers will fully negate the risk of falling, and if you're in orbit, you don't fall. Because, well, you're in orbit. There's no down. But, and I do like that they put in a rule about crashing through walls. Because remember, folks, a wall is a door with a different kind of key.
Exactly.
You can crash right through a door or a wall as part of a movement action. In a single quick action, you can move and make a strength roll as per above to breach a barrier. If you can move more than a single zone in a movement action, you have movement left after breaching the barrier. You can continue to move normally. If your strength roll fails, you have to stop the barrier and take damage equal to the armor rating of the barrier. So an interior door, 1. Wall, 2. Exterior door, 2. Exterior wall, 3. Reinforced door or wall, 4 or more. And
Lord.
First off, you do need to do a strength roll, but your slugfest damage rating has to be higher than the armor rating of the barrier. Though you can always open a electronically sealed door or hatch with a reason roll as a full action. And just as a reminder, let me open this up in a separate tab. Because I need to look back at so remember that slugfest is half of your strength. So to break through a reinforced wall, you would need a strength of 8.
Good Lord.
Out of 12.
Doors don't stop Cat Dragon Man, apparently.
Yeah. Okay. But since 2 is the average, if you've got a 2 in strength, you could break through an interior door easy. This means that the issue of I kick the door down, but I don't do enough damage doesn't. It can apply to a point, but not as frequently as we see in more litigious games, where for some reason doors and the like are given HP on the level of player characters.
But don't you like to have doors that have like 100 HP?
No.
You don't want to have the door that you have to set on fire.
No, because I'd rather let my players do something cool, like kick the door down and use the door as an improvised surfboard.
And we did have somebody who used the door that was talking, and he just kind of used it as a shield, just so he could hear it yell, I swear.
And then try to get it drunk.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he did try to get it drunk once too.
Or pull something like knock on the door, wait for somebody to go on the other side, and then drop kick the thing.
Pulling a Kazuma Kiryu, I see.
Yeah, although I think the first time I saw that stunt was the original Transporter movie.
Oh God.
Where not only did that happen, but you had the guy looking through the hole and seeing somebody run up to kick the thing.
And then Jason Statham just coming. This guy's like, I'm done.
But we already talked about it earlier, but Slugfest is one of the primary forms of attacking. Whether you're pounding with bare fists or a melee weapon, it is called a Slugfest attack. You can only make this at targets in the same zone, unless a rule says otherwise. Slugfest is a full action using the fighting skill, except the charge special attacks, which uses strength instead. If the attack hits, it deals damage equal to your Slugfest base damage, which again is half your strength score rounded up. Damage can be reduced by armor, obviously. You can choose a lower base damage if you want. Most people don't pull their punches unless they absolutely have to. If you use a weapon in the check, you inflict its base damage rating instead of your Slugfest rating. And if you're on the ground, you cannot make a Slugfest attack against an elevated target, unless you can reach it using a power or a vehicle. 2 elevated characters in the same zone are considered in the same zone and can attack each other in slugfests. Huge creatures on the ground can attack elevated targets in slugfest. So when they say huge, I'm thinking like kaiju size. So about 20 to 50 feet high.
Because what's a superhero game without some kaiju?
Mm-hmm. So if your opponent is restrained or unaware of you, they cannot block the attack. You get +2 dice. There are 2 types of special attacks with Slugfest. Charging and grappling. We'll get to those in a minute. You have to declare them before you roll any dice. There are stunts that you can use for Slugfest, though. And we already covered how stunts are generated. You roll more than 1 6. So the ones you can do, and each one of these costs 1 additional 6 rolled, at the very least. You can do extra damage, which you can do multiple times, 1 per each 6 that you spend on it. It's just doing additional damage based on your Slugfest damage rating, or the base damage of your weapon. You can do knockback, knocking them back a number of zones equal to base Slugfest damage -1. If they hit a barrier, they suffer additional damage equal to the barrier's armor rating, or the amount of knockback movement, whichever is lower. If the armor is lower, the target continues its movement through the barrier, potentially hitting more barriers until the movement stops. So if you've got high strength, you're both hitting hard and you're being able to pinball the enemy.
Because what's a good superhero game without some wall splats, am I right?
Mm-hmm. Oh. Although some people might just go through the wall anyway. Hi, Juggernaut. How you doing? But alternatively, you can stun. If you choose stun, the target takes a presence roll, no action, or if they fail that roll, they miss their next turn. They also can't perform interrupts until their next turn. Huge creatures are immune to stun. If you wish, you can spend a stun to do another movement action, or do another attack against the same target or another target. Any stunt rolled in the bonus attack cannot be used to gain another bonus attack. So you can't do infinite attacks if you roll enough 6s with this thing. Like, I'm spending.
Sorry, this is not Fist of the North Star.
Mm-hmm. No, we already have Fist of the North Star in RPG form. It's called Lone Wolf Fists.
Fair.
You can disarm, wrestle a weapon out of your opponent. You can keep the item or throw it into an adjacent zone as part of the stunt. You can save bystanders, self-explanatory there. Sometimes there might be context-sensitive stunts you could do, or if you have your own idea for a stunt, you can propose that to the GM. Now, if you're attacked in a slugfest, you can choose to block. This is a quick action. You roll fighting. You must state that you block before the attacker rolls. Blocking turns the attack into an opposed roll. And it is a interrupt action, so that does require a quick action. So if you don't have any actions left, you can't block. If I'm being honest, that kind of thing I'd probably house rule, just instead have it that for every blocking attempt you do beyond the first, you take a -1 die penalty. You can potentially block infinite amount of times, at least until you run out of dice to roll. And I know someone might say, but you don't have that kind of thing in Legend Edition. That's true. I have other things to penalize people if they choose to block or if they choose to dodge or parry, and the dice gods aren't on their side. Namely
Negative bonus.
namely the fact that you take the full damage and you don't get your armor benefit. Which, if someone's playing a first level mage, that might be a death sentence for them.
Considering on average, if you roll, depending on what you roll up, most I've seen is 7 HP. On the lower end, it's probably going to be something like 6 or 5.
Yeah. Like a first level mage is very squishy. Because they're a mage. But if you roll more successes than the attacker when blocking, you can counterattack. This counts as a normal close combat attack, which hits automatically with the 6 beyond what you needed to eliminate all the attacker's 6s. Extra 6s beyond that can be used for stunts. You cannot block a counterattack. And we have a nice little diagram showing this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Which does mean calling Slugfest basic attack would not be accurate. Or honest.
I was about to say, I hold it akin to something like what was called rush fist fighting in Dragon Ball Z Burst Limit. And if you remember that, you remember how disappointing it was.
I never played all of Burst Limit. I only played the demo.
I have all of Burst Limit. That's something I'll have to introduce you to sometime.
Yeah, I remember it not being well received at the time, but I don't remember much else.
It's because it tried to be a next gen Budokai 3 almost.
I remember some people trying to compare it to Budokai Tenkaichi, but saying it was worse.
No, because like I said, it's more like Budokai 3, but or the PSP Budokais.
Which the main thing I remember about Budokai 3 was too many damn characters, too many clone movesets, and the controversy with the soundtrack.
What the re-release or the original?
The original.
Good lord. I love that soundtrack too.
Yeah, but there apparently were a lot of tracks that were borderline plagiarism.
Oh wow. Did not know that.
But then we have the idea of wrecking a zone. As part of a Slugfest attack, you can choose to wreck the zone you're in. This means tearing it up, using objects from it to hit your opponent. The good old I will hit a motherfucker with another motherfucker. No, throw at them or even smash your opponent into them. Some zones cannot be wrecked, like an empty space. Some zones require a minimum strength score to wreck. Certain powers can also be used to wreck a zone, and wrecking it has a few effects. You get +2 dice to the attack roll, and the attack can reach an adjacent zone, range 1. A single zone can only be wrecked once during an action scene. So when it comes to zone types and the minimum strength, wrecking an office, 3 strength. Wrecking a warehouse, 4 strength. Wrecking a city street, 5 strength. Wrecking a forest, 6 strength. Wrecking a mountain, 7 strength.
What about wrecking the moon?
12, maybe?
Asking for a friend.
Wrecking a mountain, but that looks more like a plateau.
Also, I fixed it. Now I can actually see the PDF. I just had to fix it. I had to actually do a whole bunch of stuff to get Adobe to actually work on my thing because my other thing wasn't working. So
I haven't used Adobe.
It now works.
I haven't used Adobe in years. I use Foxit.
I was trying to do anything I could to make this thing actually work because it kept giving me white boxes, and I was like, I don't like white boxes.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, Adobe works a lot better on mobile phones than it does on computers for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
I'm used to it now from work, so I'm like, I just went to go grab it because I'm like, I'm used to this crap from work, so let me just get something I'm accustomed to.
Mm-hmm. But Charge is a special type of slugfest, which is exactly what it sounds like. You're getting out your credit card. No, I'm kidding. Uh, it has to be a charge has to be combined with movement, so it is both a full and a quick action. It cannot start in the same zone as the target. The movement has to stop at the point of attack unless you slam the target. And a charge is rolled as a normal slugfest with a few differences. 1, you're rolling strength instead of fighting. 2, you cannot block a charge, but you can dodge it as if it was a shooting attack. And 3, when charging, the only allowed stunts are extra damage and slam.
Now, when they say zones, are they talking like a hex grid?
They're talking broad areas. There's not a set size when it comes to zones, but more of taking a gridless map and putting in lines for different areas. There is the baseline that a zone is 100 feet wide, but there are exceptions to that rule.
Right.
And a big reason for that is it's very clear that this isn't a case where you have one participant per zone. You're supposed to have multiple ones in it. So I guess you could think of these zones as like the individual areas in a Monster Hunter map.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes it any easier.
No, that actually makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can visualize it a little better.
Yeah. The areas are just a bit closer to each other than the ones you'd see in a Monster Hunter map. So a Monster Hunter map post-world, I guess. But with a slam, it is a stunt. If you have remaining movement after the point of attack, you can spend 1 extra to push your opponent before you and keep moving in the same direction until your move ends. If you hit a barrier along the way, they suffer additional damage equal to the barrier's armor rating, or your base slugfest damage, whichever is lower. If the armor is lower, you keep going. So slam is essentially the charge version of knockback.
Or Raiden's push.
Mm-hmm. Which, speaking of Raiden, did you hear about the upscaling of that anniversary book for Mortal Kombat?
No, I have not.
It was clear that whoever was handling the book, maybe NetherRealm Studios, did AI upscaling, and it looks like shit.
Ugh.
Upscaling of the old sprites. Let me clarify.
Oh God, no.
The old character portrait sprites, not the full characters, obviously.
Oh, thank God.
But then we have Grapple, which is another slugfest alternative. Grapple uses fighting and can be blocked. No weapon can be used. If you're successful, the opponent can't move or perform perform any actions regarding movement except trying to break free, which is an opposed strength roll. No action for you, only your opponent, so the opponent can push their attempt to break free, but you can't. While you're grappling, the only thing you can perform is movement and a grapple attack. This works as a normal unarmed attack, but it cannot be blocked, and the only stunt allowed is extra damage. Huge creatures cannot be grappled. So,
you could, but it wouldn't end well for you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Neris would try it anyway.
Yes, she would. And that's why we all love her.
But
I mean, she pinned a dragon's toe once.
huge creatures have a few rules. They can attack elevated characters. Slugfests like stunts like knockback, stun, and slam can't be used on them. They can't be grappled, and they are immune to action banter. But before we go ahead.
I was about to say, when you're a giant rampaging kaiju, you kind of don't give a shit about what other people think.
Yeah, but I need to step aside for 1 minute, so I'm going to hit the BRB.
Okie dokie.
Maria
And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. So we last left off on Slugfest and the sub-rules with it. So now let's go to shooting. You know, something Sig and I are very familiar with.
Yes, quite.
So when shooting at a distance, you roll for agility. You obviously need a power or weapon that allows for shooting attacks. Shooting is a full action. All shooting powers have a minimum and maximum range. Range 0 means inside the same zone. Attacks closer than minimum range get -3 dice. A weapon cannot be used beyond its maximum range. So something that might have range 1, I'd say would be the equivalent of maybe a rocket or a howitzer. You guys are talking some mad shit for some really solid looking grid coordinate.
Yep.
But much like with Slugfest, if you roll more than 1/6 when shooting, you can spend those extra for stunts. So the stunts we have are extra damage, self-explanatory there. Disarm, so you can shoot an item off the opponent, because everybody loves that. Bonus attack, you can shoot again. A special stunt, or come up with your own. And you can, when it comes to Slugfest, you can counter those with blocking. With shooting, that is countered with dodging. But it works on a similar measure. So you're rolling agility. You have to be aware of the attacker, obviously, and have to declare a dodge. It becomes a opposed roll, and it can be interrupt. It is treated as an interrupt as well as a dodge move. Is available as a stunt. You can't counterattack a shooting attack unless you've got something that says otherwise, but you can move one zone for each 6 that you rolled. I.e., if you're getting shot at, this is how you can easily get out of the way, so you're not going to get shot at as much.
Yes.
But then we have explosions. Some powers have an explosive effect. You use these with a normal shooting attack, but if you hit your target, all other characters in the same zone suffer the same damage. Each target can dodge the attack separately. If your attack misses, the shot is assumed to have gone astray and hurts no one. Or the explosive was a dud, either way. You can place explosives. Detonations caused by anything that's not a ranged attack have a blast rating and a base damage. The base damage is 1/3 of the blast power, round up to the nearest whole number. When the explosion occurs, roll for an attack with a number of dice equal to the blast rating. If the attack hits, everyone in the zone suffers the base damage plus 1 point of damage for each 6 rolled. Everyone in an adjacent zone suffers no base damage, but they can take 1 point of damage for each 6 rolled. The blast roll cannot be pushed, and it is dodged normally, and damage from an explosion can be reduced by armor. So, given that, I'd say something that's a blast of 3 I'd say that'd be equivalent of maybe a grenade. Certainly damaging, but when you're dealing with whole zones, something that could be easily gotten out of the way of. Whereas something like a 12, does anyone want some Wang?
As badass ninjas in this monastery, we made explosive weapons.
Yeah, because Wang just happens to have a nuclear bomb in his house.
In case he needs it.
I mean, don't you have a nuclear weapon in your inventory just in case?
Cab, for the last time, we don't talk about the stockpile in the attic.
But when it comes to damage, obviously damage goes straight to health. How much damage you can take before being broken is determined by health score. Damage can be reduced by armor. Armor is straight soak, which always makes more logical sense than, oh, you're wearing plate mail, which means you dodge easier. No, I'm never letting that shit go.
Nope.
That kind of thing with armor class was always weird to me. Whether it be armor class in the Thaco era or in the modern era, the fact that it is determining whether or not you get hit, but higher AC means the odds of not getting hit, which means you are effectively dodging. I know some will say that it's the odds of you taking damage, but it is described as to hit.
Yep.
So I'm not giving that a
Yeah.
pass.
I kind of think of plate as like the glancing off of things, but that if I think about it, that's just damage being reduced by armor. So
They still write it as Thaco
hit.
is 2-hit armor class 0. So,
Yep.
Yep.
so regardless of how someone wants to try and dress it up, it is lipstick on a pig. Whatever kind of lipstick you put on that pig, it's still a pig. But if you go down to 0 health, you are broken by damage, and immediately roll for a critical injury table. On the critical injury table, you roll a d6, add the number of damage points you suffered in excess, and that determines what critical injury you take. So, on the low end, you have a torn suit. On the high end, if you roll a 13 or higher, torn apart.
Oh, your jibs.
Yeah, but like each of these is going to be pretty debilitating, and the higher it goes, the longer it's going to take to heal, unless you've got some rapid healing benefits. But if you suffer additional
Hey,
damage while broken, even by a single point, you automatically suffer another critical injury. And if you have a critical injury and you suffer another, roll for it normally, but any result equal to or lower than the worst crit you had is automatically replaced with a crit one step worse. So if you have battered and you roll a 3, it is shifted up to crushed arm.
Ow.
So taking multiple critical injuries is not a good idea.
Definitely not.
Mm-hmm.
I like 12 better than 13. Because his head popped off.
But if you are broken by damage, as long as you haven't suffered the cracked skull or worse critical injury, so 9 or higher, you can try and get up again on your turn in the round. This is called rallying. It is a full action that requires a presence roll. If this succeeds, you get 1 point of health back per 6 that you rolled. Your critical injury remains, though, which increases the risk of more severe injuries. You can only get health back by rallying when you are broken. Now, if an NPC is broken, you don't need to go through critical injury unless you want to. You can just say they're knocked out. For major NPCs, critical injuries should be rolled up like PCs. Now, you can be stabilized, which is a reason roll. Only one attempt is allowed. Certain powers can also stabilize lethal crits. After an action scene, you automatically recover all lost health within a few minutes, as long as you don't engage in any further strenuous activities. Certain powers can restore your health during an action scene, such as regeneration. Note that recovering all your health points doesn't mean your critical injuries are gone. These take longer.
Yep.
So, a cracked skull takes a few weeks. Getting crushed takes a few months. And obviously, if your head's crushed, there is no need for healing time because you're dead.
Yep.
If you're torn apart, you might be a pancake.
He's dead, Jim. But
What if he dies, but he has the thumbs up like he's okay?
he's still dead.
Are you sure? Because I'm pretty sure the body says he's not. I think he's okay.
Nope, still dead.
That's just... I was about to say, no, that's just an involuntary muscle response.
He's still okay. He's got 1 HP left.
Now, when it comes to damaging objects, they have a durability rating, which determines how much damage they can take before they're broken. Damaged objects and materials can be repaired, though it takes a few hours of work and a reason roll. Tools can give you bonus dice to roll, and in some cases you need them. If the roll is successful, the tool's durability goes up by 1 for each 6 rolled, up to the object's starting level. If the roll fails, the object's durability is permanently decreased to its current level. If the object has been reduced to 0 and the attempt to repair it fails, the object is destroyed. So if you're repairing that thing, don't fuck up.
Because if you do fuck up, you'll have to answer to the dice gods.
And we already mentioned action banter, but here's where how it works can apply. It is an opposed presence roll. It has to target an opponent in the same zone. For each 6 you roll, the target suffers 1 stress. And as mentioned, stress is mental damage. The limit is, of course, your resolve. If it goes to 0, you are broken by stress, and you can't bring yourself to continue. You can't roll for any attributes or powers or use any talents. Stress doesn't inflict critical injuries, but you are still taken out. You can, however, rally with a presence roll, which works the same way as rallying when it comes to being broken by normal damage. However, you can't self-rally as opposed to health, unless you've got a ability that specifically says you can. Resolve is not automatically recovered beyond the first point. To recover your resolve, you need to take part in a social scene, typically with one of your key relationships. When a social scene is concluded, you recover all lost resolve.
I like that. Because that's like, because, you always think that, superheroes being superheroes, it's like, okay, they have to have their body broken, but they can definitely have their mind broken too. And have things that will, and having just like something like that happen is definitely really cool for like role playing and like really developing things.
They could definitely have their mind broken. Charles Xavier says hi.
I know they can have their mind broken. I get that, but like it's not something that you see a lot in except with X-Men, really, and like there's I think a few others, but like X-Men's the big one.
Yeah, there's plenty where it can happen. I'd say Spawn has had his mind broken a few times. Then again, given all the shit that Al Simmons did and has gone through, and the fact that he has a named symbiote in his body. But then we have challenges, challenges are kind of the dice rolls for a lot of the non-combat things. Or rather, they're the long-term ones. A challenge will have a challenge rating and a time limit, as well as one or more objectives. When you roll for challenges, for each 6 that you roll, the challenge loses 1 point from its challenge rating. If it gets to 0 before the time limit expires, the challenge is considered dealt with. So I'd say challenges are going to be your extended actions. Now, the next chapter, the Clone Job, is essentially a sample adventure. And that's kind of the reason I'm skipping a good part of that. And at the tail end of it, we have the ending credits and the like.
Oh, this was done by Robert Kirkman?
Yeah.
Holy shit. Did not know that. That's pretty awesome.
So, before we wrap up with Invincible, I do want to show some of the player characters. Some of the pre-gens.
Okie dokie.
Right.
So, I'm going to... This is something where I can just put it straight in the side chat, fortunately. So
That's okay. At least we'll be able to see it.
So let me do that. I do appreciate the very comic book style presentation with the book. I mean, it is based on a comic, but having sections of the pages be like comic panels is a nice touch. But
Okie dokie, let's open her up. If it'll actually do it. Anatomy. Oh, that's a nice one.
but we can see some of the way power works. So we have the power source, which in Eve's case is bioengineering, as well as the powers that they have access to and what it can do, as well as talents. Talents, I would say, are akin to feats. They're meant to be little tricks that you can do. And while there is the controller role for Eve, it's not like it's giving anything beyond that. One thing I do notice is that the powers that we have here are pretty straightforward in terms of how they work. I don't think we're going to be dealing with the whole PowerPoint budget that you might see in something like Mutants and Masterminds. With Bulletproof, we do have examples of major powers. I am curious what Karma is supposed to be. I think that's something we won't see until we see the full game.
They have a pre-gen here named Robot. Well, it's certainly a better name than Geode.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. And of course, when it comes to some of the powers, we do see some blatant drawbacks. But I don't think we're going to be dealing with drawbacks on a point system. I don't see anything that would indicate any sort of point system when it comes to powers. I think it's more of slots from what I'm seeing here, but I could be wrong. And like I said, the powers themselves are very straightforward. I know that there were ranked powers, but I think it's if I had to guess, the approach that we've got here is you have a certain number of slots for powers, and some powers, like major ones, take more slots.
Mm-hmm.
But outside, for me personally, the core mechanics with Invincible I really like. I do like that they are very much emphasizing how you can completely destroy an area when getting into superhero level combat.
Yep.
I think the thing that's going to make or break the game is how it handles powers, power creation, and power customization. Because superhero RPGs have a bit of a reputation for being very crunch heavy, very front-loaded crunch heavy when it comes to setting up your powers. On the other end, you have games like Masks, which are just write whatever when it comes to your powers, and go too far the other way, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking Invincible is trying to do something right in the middle, which if it does, then this is going to be an instant recommend to God knows how many people who are fans of comic books, but are a bit daunted by, say, the point by approach of powers that you see in Mutants and Masterminds, or God help you, Hero System.
I mean, this is another Free League banger, and I do like what I've read of it, so yeah, I would definitely give this one a shot.
Yeah.
One looks pretty fun. I like Rexplode because of all of like the wild like it just looks like he's a little bit he's a wild card, and it definitely feels like it with what I'm seeing on him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just glad Joe's not here to make some kind of joke.
But when it comes to the rest of the mechanics, a lot of them are what I'd expect from a Free League project. Things like Slugfest and the like are definitely new here. But I would say I will probably look into the full version when the opportunity comes, because I did back it. What I mainly want to see is whether or not they are doing a kind of pick a bunch approach, whether it's a package thing with powers or just how character creation with powers is going to work. Because the rest of character creation, I can pretty much extrapolate how it's going to work just from working with other Year Zero projects. Like, for example, I'll bring up Coriolis. I'm not bringing up second edition yet because I don't think that's fully out yet. Actually, no, it is. I just want to go with first edition for the sake of it. But when you're making your character in that, you are distributing a certain amount of attribute points, distributing skills. You pick one talent. You choose a personal problem. You get one talent from your icon. It's complicated, and the rest kind of flows naturally with that. That part is probably going to be present here. Distributing a number of attribute and skill points. Though, so let me check those pre-gens. Because do we even have skill points in this? Let me see.
Doesn't look like it from what I've seen.
So yeah, it looks like we're doing straight attributes.
Yeah, and it also says something about resources, but I'm not 100% sure what that one is. If I missed it, then I missed it.
Resources is a special attribute for how easy it is to get stuff and what your standard of living is. Kind of like
gotcha.
Kind of like the resource stat you'd see in a White Wolf game.
Like the Call of Cthulhu thing, where it's like, hey, you're this kind of class type thing.
Can be.
Whenever it comes to a resource type thing.
I think a closer to the mark example is the amount of resource dots you would have in, say, Vampire. Especially since we're using a D6 system with this. But since it's not doing skills, I think that's a smart move to do, because trying to figure out the skill list in more modern games can result in a temptation to have way too many skills. But until I hear otherwise, I am assuming Karma is meant to be your version of experience. Kind of like what Karma is in Shadowrun.
Yep.
I don't know that for certain, obviously, but that's what I'm assuming based on just observations. When it comes to attributes, it looks like, actually, you know what? The use of powers and boosts might be the replacement for skills. That is me spitballing, but I could easily see that. But still. So far, another Free League banger. it is going to be largely dependent on how well it handles its power system. Because that is the one thing I could see going either way. So then that brings us over to the second one we're going to be covering tonight, Heroes of Light.
I'm super excited because I read over this one.
This is trying to channel Fire Emblem. It is a perpetual work in progress, obviously, and it's not going to be as pretty because it's a 2-person project. But some of the art that they've got for it, I think is cute, especially the cover art. So. Though even though they call this the 4.0.3 beta, they have described it as their final version of the handbook.
Okay.
So it's as finished as it's gonna get.
Totally get that though, because I mean, there's a point where it just, it is what it is.
Yep. So. First thing first, we go into what is Fire Emblem. Then going into the basics. The game relies solely on d20s. Most often rolls will use 1 d20, some may use 2 or even 3. And keeping either the highest or lowest value. Once the die is rolled, applicable stats are added. And sometimes you might need to divide the number. If a number has to be rounded, round down unless it says otherwise. In the case of a tie, the defender always wins. So then it goes into the stats. First we have the out-of-combat stats, which are distributed in character creation. So we have strength, intellect, perception, charisma, fate, finesse, and acrobatics. And when it comes to these, fate is for luck-based rolls. It is either luck divided by 5 or 3, whichever is lower. Finesse is dexterity divided by 5 or a baseline of 3. And acrobatics is either speed divided by 5 or a baseline of 3. But then we have the base combat stats, which are going to be HP, attack, defense, dexterity, speed, resistance, and luck. For every 4 points in dexterity, you get 1 extra point in hit. With speed, if you have 4 or more speed, then your opponent, you can do a follow-up attack. Resistance reduce is basically defense, but for magic. And for every 4 points in luck, you get 1 extra point of avoid. Then the derived combat stats, which is hit, so the odds of you hitting, which is based on dexterity. If you have more hit than the opponent's avoid, you get advantage on attacks. Avoid is your ability to dodge, which is affected by luck plus 4. If a unit has 8 or more avoid than their opponent has hit, it causes the opponent to take disadvantage on their attacks. Critical avoid is avoid plus 15, so the avoid used to avoid critical hits. Might is the amount the unit's equipped weapon adds to any attacks made with it. Power is cumulative power of an attack, so attack plus might. Try is for the weapon triangle, i.e. how much better you're doing if you have an advantage or disadvantage in the weapon triangle. It is power divided by 5. Damage, self-explanatory. It is damage is the sum of power plus or minus try, minus defense. Traits being our perks, charge being a value that's built up through battles and can be used for combat arts. Gauge for transformation effects, which determines various stats, starts at 4, going down by 1. So gauge is essentially how long a a certain user can transform if they have that ability. Movement, self-explanatory. Size, also self-explanatory, can be used for aid. Aid is the ability to rescue a unit based on strength and movement. Con is how easily they can be rescued based on size and movement. Range is how close or far away a unit can target another with weapons, so self-explanatory there. All weapons can target or counterattack an opponent from their minimum range's amount of tiles to their max range. So you can counterattack a ranged shot. Of course, min range and max range. But then we get into character creation and progression. So first, choose a weapon proficiency. This is the weapon type you excel at by default. Then decide a movement type. The movement types are infantry, armor, flyer, and cavalry. This determines what sort of terrain you can and can't go through, as well as base movement, traits, and factors into rescuing and being rescued. Then distribute stats. Since every character starts at level 1, they get 12 points across their combat stats and 6 for their non-combat stats. Then choose skills. You get 2 skills to start, one based on your movement type, and another from any skill on the skills page. In some cases, you may get a personal skill for the latter instead. And lastly is setting up items. You have 1,000 gold and an herb as your starting setup. So then we get to weapon proficiency. And the first thing we have is physical weaponry. First being swords, lances, and axes. Each of these having their own triangle. We have bows and daggers, which it does state daggers can be used to attack from melee or range, while bows can only be ranged attacks, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I figured that with bow. With dagger, that's an interesting choice. Strikes, talons, and breaths are weapons used exclusively by transforming characters. You can switch between transformed and untransformed, which gives you a lot of benefits, but you can only do that for so long. And when you're transformed, you get additional weaknesses. Then we have magical weaponry. So we have the usual trinity of anima, light, and dark. And they can attack from range without additional skills. We also have shifting stones, which which gives some transformation effects. And curses, which is self-explanatory what curses are going to be. And we have special weaponry in the form of staves. So we have staves are you cannot initiate attacks at creation, but they can be used to counterattack in a pinch. All staves possess the ability to heal allies, and staff users can use staves to further aid allies in other ways, as well as debuff enemies. But your starting weapon, after you pick your proficiencies, is granted, which has a range, might, a type, and the type of proficiency you need to go with. But the idea with using strikes, talons, and breaths, again, you transform, you get +4 to might, represented by the gauge stat, and that bonus goes down by 1 each round afterwards. Of course, if you spend a full turn transforming, you can reset this. So, just trying to stay transformed for the entire duration might not be the best idea.
Remember that from Fire Emblem Awakening.
Then we have movement types. So the options are infantry, cavalry, flyer, and armor. And each one has their particular movement, what they can't travel into, their base aid, and a bonus skill. I'd say, and it looks like Flyer is meant to be a catch-all for both Pegasus Knights and Dragon Knights. And armor is meant to be, well, the tanky boys and girls.
The ones that literally shoot their weapons and then drag them back by a chain.
It does say armor units get access to all skills 5 levels earlier than the prerequisite. Whereas flyers don't take penalties from terrain, but they don't get bonuses from them either. Whereas as cavalry has the highest movement, but also the one that's hindered most by terrain. And infantry is meant to be the middle ground. There's also the fact that cavalry and flyer have a higher base aid. So that's another thing to keep an eye out for. But each character starts with at least 15 HP and 3 in each combat stat. So at the start, it's gonna look like HP 15, attack, speed, dexterity, defense, resistance, and luck are gonna be 3. You then get 12 points to distribute. The maximum amount of HP you can have at level 1 is 20, and for everything else, the cap is 8. After you determine combat stats, then you determine non-combat stats, which are assigned a value of 0 to 3. No matter what, your non-combat stats have to total 6. The 3 other ones, Fate, Finesse, and Acrobatics, are determined by Luck, Dexterity, and Speed. Which is something we've already covered. And then with derived stats with hit, that's your dexterity divided by 4. Avoid is luck divided by 4. And then rounding down and then adding 4. Critical avoid is avoid plus 15. So a character with 6 dexterity and 4 luck at level 1 would have a hit of 1, an avoid of 5, and a critical avoid of 20. And then we have power and try. Your power is equal to your attack plus your weapon's might, whereas try is power divided by 5. And we have size, which is basically how big you are. So 1 is small, 2 is medium, 3 is large, and 4 or higher is extra large. This can determine your con. Most of the time con is just size, but armor units get +2 to con, and while transformed, units with strike, talon, or breath weapons get +2 size. Lastly, aid is found by adding strength plus base aid, as well as, and finally, potential traits, which are more of tags, things like furred, winged, scaled, and fiendish, for character types. But then we have skills, which Thankfully, it's not a case of distributing skill points. These are... Skills here aren't far removed from feats. And come in 5 types. Passive, always on. Action, takes your full action. Strategy, you declare them at the start of combat, before the user initiates combat. Technique, are declared after a combat is initiated, before you strike an opponent. And reflex is determined when an opponent strikes you. You get 2 by default. One of them is by choice, one of them is based on your movement type. You can only take a skill once per unit. Any skills gained as a result, any stats gained as a result of skills are calculated independently of stat caps. And there's also we also have movement skills, which move the user when they're done as well, and do follow terrain rules, i.e., so if you can't move in that terrain, you can't use movement skills. And no unit can enter impassable terrain through the effect of movement skills, and only flyers can enter difficult terrain.
Mm-hmm.
But then we have combat arts, which you can get as you level up. These cost charge, which is accrued through participating in combat, at a rate of 1 point per round. Charge can be spent at any time to trigger a combat art, so long as the conditions are met. They have to be declared at the times based on their type. So to use a strategy combat art, you need to have charge required to use it, and declare that you're activating it before initiating combat. Whereas technique combat arts must be called for before rolling accuracy on an attack. A unit can activate as many combat arts as they have charge for, so a unit with 8 charge could choose to spend all their charge to activate 2 combat arts that cost 4 each. There is no upper limit for charge, but obviously, and a unit can gain charge even after combat where they use combat arts. There is also the option of personal skills, which we have a spread of to give a few examples. Each of them requires a particular kind of background, so it's really a GM call about whether or not someone would qualify for a personal skill. Which, certainly a nice touch there.
Mm-hmm.
But then we do have the benefits for leveling up. And obviously, after completing a map, every unit gains a level regardless of frequency of use. I appreciate that because I never liked having it where everybody's got enough XP to level up except for one guy, which is the reason I never liked the whole different level up thresholds for different classes in, say, AD&D. I know why it was done, I just don't like it. But every time you get a level, you distribute 3 points into stats, but there are caps for both HP and for the other stats. But at certain levels, you do get certain additional bonuses. Like at 5, you get a new skill. At 7, you get a basic attribute. 10 and 15, you're getting a new skill. At 17, you're getting an attribute or a basic attribute. A new skill at 20th and 25. A new attribute of any weapon at 27, and a new skill at 30. 30 being the level cap. And when it comes to weapon refinement, there are 2 types of attributes for weapon refinement: basic and advanced. A weapon can have up to 2 attributes. Each attribute can only be taken once, and only one of them can be advanced. Some weapons have a innate attribute, which is independent and always found on that type of weapon. this does not take up a refined slot. And some attributes give the ability to use effects. When that's equipped, you can use your whole action to use that effect, rolling accuracy of targeting an opponent. Staves mainly get this kind of thing. Once you reach 15th level, you can get access to certain skills that may allow you additional weapon proficiencies, which expands your options for obtaining weapons. Now, you don't gain weapons for free whenever you get a new proficiency. You can apply the refines you get from leveling up to any weapon in that proficiency, including those that you only gained access to through weapon proficiencies. So you get refines on your weapons for free at 7, 17, and 27, getting 3 points at which you can refine a weapon for free. And refining is just putting in an additional attribute. But when it comes to something that I did notice is that I'm not seeing the, and this may have been a smart move. I'm not seeing the equivalent of the class tree that you would see in a Fire Emblem game proper. I think that's a smart move because those class trees can go in a lot of different directions and are probably too granular to do in a TTRPG.
I'd agree.
Not to mention the whole random chance about what stats go up whenever you level up. That's not going to be as fun in a... I've seen some games try and emulate that, but it's not going to be as fun. Obviously, depending on the game. I know RuneQuest does the whole learn by doing thing. But the approach with that is it's easy to level up stats when they're low. It's harder to do so when they're high. But with non-combat actions, it is a D20 roll. If you have 0 in a non-combat stat, you basically roll with disadvantage. And when it comes to determining success, we do have a degree of success thing here. If you roll 5 over, it's a complete success and probably some bonus. If you roll 1 to 4 over, it's a success with no cost. If you roll the exact difficulty, it's success with a minor cost. If you roll between 4 to 1 under, it's a fail or you can succeed at a great cost. And 5 or more under is a complete failure. So we have a bit of and but here. I think the only thing that concerns me is what would be the dividing line between a great and a minor cost?
You cut out, so I didn't hear that last part.
What would be the difference between a great and a minor cost?
I mean, it could be something literal, like if we're gonna go 100% literal and be like, minor cost being a few gold versus a great cost being a lot of gold, or you could be something even more of like minor cost being okay, well, let's do a blood pact versus great cost being okay, give me one of your farmers, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. That would be my thought processes would be kind of depending on the non-combat, since it's a non-combat here. Like, do I lose a hand or do I lose a pinky? Mm-hmm. There's a greater cost losing a hand than losing a pinky if I'm stealing something.
Mm-hmm. I can get that. Or some people might go, oh, it's just a flesh wound.
Success at a minor cost is a flesh wound. Success at a great cost is still a flesh wound, but it's a more painful flesh wound.
Your arm's off.
No, it isn't.
What's that then?
It's a flesh wound. At worse.
You liar!
You're a loony.
And there's our... Fortunately, unlike the Department of Special Corrections, we do not have a no Python rule.
And we don't get tased for it.
But we also have the rule of supports, which is a nice touch. Supports allow two units to fight better together. The closer they get, the better they fight in tandem. It can be based on the number of maps, which should be around 3 to 5, GM's discretion. Though we also have a story-based approach to it.
So again, more Fire Emblem Awakening influences.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I will say there was more than just Fire Emblem Awakening did this. Like this was in like the original GPA one. Like you literally, if I were to fight right next to Lynn, I'd get rank up with Lynn. So.
Although I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up that the GBA 1 is a enhanced remake, technically.
Mm-hmm.
Although it could be worse, you could be playing Thracia 776.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know what that is.
Yes,
that is a Fire Emblem that was fan translated. It is infamous for being one of the hardest Fire Emblems because of how evil its design is. It was one of the last that was done by some of the original team.
Mm-hmm.
But it has gained infamy for being a case of a term that I've spoken with you about a few times, Sig. Evil game design.
Quite.
Hi, Descent. How you doing?
Never played it. I've only seen it in action. I've never actually played it myself.
Or, I suppose I could also bring up the murder rooms in Wolfenstein 3D. And the fucking mutants.
I've only vaguely played that. I don't remember much of it.
And, well, it would be redundant bringing up the Plutonia experiment.
Yeah, because there's plenty of nope rooms in there.
Well, nope rooms, and it fits the rule of evil game design because it was designed to be an asshole.
Yes. Still a good time because at least the suffering is only short term, generally speaking.
Yeah. But when it comes to bonuses for supported units, they get boosts to their stats in battle whenever they're within 2 spaces of one another. This is based on movement type, with infantry units getting the option to choose during creation which of the bonuses they give to their partner. The extent is based on the level of support. So it says, for example, if an armor unit and a cavalry unit have a B support with each other, as long as they're within 2 spaces of one another, the armor will gain attack +2, and the cavalry will gain defense +1 and resistance +1. If an infantry unit decides during character creation that they will give their support partner flyer bonuses and has an A support with flyer, both units get speed 2 and avoid 1 when they're within 2 spaces of each other. So that ends up making infantry units far more of the jack of many trades.
Mm-hmm.
In that regard, I'd say they're kind of in the same position as the squire job in my game.
Yeah.
Where you're not picking squire because you want to go on the offense. You're picking squire because you're trying to be a team player. That's not to say you can't go on the offense as squire, but your party composition is going to determine how you approach things.
Exactly.
But when it comes to combat, it is on phases. You have the player phase, the partner phase, the enemy phase, and other. Player is self-explanatory. Partner is allied forces. These are GM-controlled allies. Enemy is, enemies, and other is unaffiliated parties. And then we get into what happens when you start a phase as well as complete it. Um, each unit has one movement action and one act. And of course, when it comes to combat, you are rolling d20 plus hit and comparing it to your target's avoid. If you roll over avoid, you hit. If you don't, you miss. If you tie, the defender wins, meaning you still miss. Obviously, damage is power minus the defender's defense for physical weapons or resistance for magical weapons, as well as any additional factors such as skills or refines. Damage cannot be lower than 1, so you can't fully tank. And staves cannot initiate combat, at least at first.
Nope.
So, if an attack that hits rolled higher than the opponent's critical avoid, then it's treated as a critical hit, which deals double damage.
I remember critical hits in Fire Emblem being nasty.
Yeah.
They are nasty.
Which, I think the critical avoid with one of the ones we saw earlier was 16, so there's a 25% chance to do that. But remember, you have to hit, and you have to hit critical avoid.
Yep.
Which, given that, this reminds me very much of the cap check in Emberwind. The cap check was a roll under, where you were rolling against 3 target numbers you had: critical, accuracy, and penetration. You roll under accuracy, you hit, you deal normal damage. You roll under penetration, you deal normal damage, and you ignore their resistance. You roll critical, you deal damage, it ignores their armor, and it's doubled. The die is doubled, not the total, I should say. And, of course, because of the fact that there is the tri stat, we have the effect of the good old weapon triangle. With two triangles we've got here. So swords beat axes, axes beat lances, lances beat swords. Anima beats light, light beats dark, dark beats anima. If you have an advantage with the weapon triangle, you get +2 to your hit, and you add tri to your power. If you're attacking with a disadvantage, then you subtract 2 to your hit, and you subtract tri from your power. And remember, power is the stat you use for your core damage. So this does mean that the weapon triangle can certainly be an advantage, but even if you're at a disadvantage, you can still somewhat hold your own, which is more than can be said for some of the video games. Where if you're attacking and you've got weapon disadvantage, you've got no chance of doing much.
Yeah, you kind of just like, good luck.
Now, with some weapons will do additional damage against certain units. And in that kind of sense, it'll just do more damage against enemies that have particular traits. And they also bring up combat arts, which we already talked about, as well as supports, which we've already talked about. Then there is counterattacking. When you struck, the defender gets their shot. If the attacker is within the defender's weapon's range, they'll roll d20 to hit and compare it to their avoid, much like with the attacker. The defender can get criticals, can use combat arts, and so on, as long as they meet the requirements. Once both sides of attack, if one unit has 4 or more speed than the other, they get to attack again for a follow-up. it looks like follow-ups cannot trigger counterattacks. Which is good, because you really want the counter that you see in, say, Disgaea.
Yep.
Now, if you have a staff, you can counterattack if the opponent's at one range. And if you have no weapons or chosen to unequip, or the attacker is outside your weapon range, you can't counterattack, nor can you follow up, even if your speed would allow it. And they go into using action skills, using the effects of staff. A staff user gets one charge after using an effect, regardless of positive or negative. Then rescuing units, because everybody's panicked when that one valuable unit they wanted to keep goes to 0 HP. It's like, oh, time to reset the fight.
Yeah, time to reload my last chapter.
Mm-hmm. So, rescuing is basically taking them out of the battlefield. You can only rescue one other unit, but can hold on to that unit indefinitely, unless the rescuer's HP reaches 0. While holding a unit, the rescuer takes disadvantage on all attacks that they make, and all attacks against them have advantage. On the turn that they rescue a unit, they can use Canter to move, but otherwise end their turns. Similarly, when the rescuer decides to drop the rescue, they place the unit in any adjacent square and can Canter if applicable. In order to rescue a unit, that is tied to the aid and con stats. You can rescue any unit whose con is less than the rescuer's aid. But, of course, trading and using items, which is standard fare there. Then we have units with barriers, which is basically it's even tougher than normal. And Amov says, it's not save scumming, it's using features that are part of the game. I don't have the level of vitriol for save scumming that some people do, because I defy anyone to play through a Kaizo Mario and not use save states.
Oh god, no, I would never do that. I would never play a Kaizo, is what I mean.
But then we have the rules for terrain, which you have different types with different effects for indoor and outdoor, and whether or not they count as standard, rough, or difficult terrain for the purposes of movement rules. And we also have a rule for siege weaponry. Siege weaponry is impassable, and the weapon can either be physical or magical, and can be used for very ranged attack because, well, it's siege weapons.
Mm-hmm.
You can initiate combat with a siege weapon if you're adjacent to it. You're just using that weapon instead of whatever weapon you have equipped. Siege weaponry cannot follow up attack, obviously. They have a range of 3 to 10, and do not take your attack stat into account when calculating damage. But we also have an optional rule for Fog of War, but if I'm being honest, I never use Fog of War. Especially in Roll20, we're setting up Fog of War. I know some people do it, but I always found it a pain to do.
Yeah, with Roll20, I don't know, it really depends.
I mean, I only on Roll20 will use it with dynamic lighting, but it takes some time and takes a lot of getting used to. But when you do it, when we've done it right, it's like it gets super cool really fast.
Emma says, well, if XCOM the reboot, I totally save scummed, especially for that one whaling mission. You know the one. If someone save scums with XCOM, I'm not going to hold it against them, for the same reason I don't hold it against someone doing it in Fire Emblem.
Yeah, you could have like 99% chance to hit, still miss.
Mm-hmm.
At point blank.
I especially am not going to hold it against someone for save scumming if they're doing the Long War mod. Which, if you're doing that, you have only yourself to blame.
Mm-hmm.
But when it... Obviously, after that we have status effects as well as stabilization. So you're not completely dead when you're at 0 HP, you're just knocked out. You can be stabilized to return them to play. If you're stabilized, you come back with 1 HP and the injured status. So we're not doing that whole 0 HP, that character is gone for good.
Yeah, it's more like Shining Force in that regard. They're just off the battlefield and just really hurt.
Mm-hmm. Now there are some optional rule sets. One of them being Divine Dice, which you have 3 Divine Dice, which you can use to replace the results of any roll, player or GM. However, there is a catch. Once the Divine Dice is used, it can't be used again until the player's Divine Dice are recharged. On top of that, these 3 Divine Dice are shared among all players, which means that if one player uses the Divine 20, the others have to wait for it to recharge before they can use it. By default, this recharges happens once every 3 sessions, but you can shorten or lengthen it to modify difficulty. Personally, the approach I would do a similar approach with Divine Dice if I was running this, but instead I'd roll 5 dice and say to the players, the results of these you can swap with any die you roll, but the die switches. So if say one of these dice is a 7 and you roll a 2, you can switch it, and now that 2 that you had rolled becomes the Divine Dice 2. And the reason I do that is because the GM can also use these to screw over the players if he wants to, with the same rule. I guess you could say this is analogous to the way light and dark side points work in FFG Star Wars. Or if you spend a light side point, it gets turned into a dark side point the GM can spend, and vice versa, but there's never any additional points added. On the other hand, if you want to go for the true Fire Emblem experience, we do have Classic Mode as an optional rule set, where if a character is knocked out, you get 1 turn to try and stabilize them, or they are permanently lost. And if an injured character is knocked out, they are permanently lost. I like that they call it Classic Mode because we know what the scheme is.
It's not even classic mode. It's once your HP hits 0, you're just dead.
Mm-hmm. I know some grogs like to say that makes them real gamers, that they go with that instead of death saves, but I think that's fucking stupid.
I think in a game that you have magic in general that has like healing magic, then you should have at least some time to, like, even if it's a turn, if it's 2 turns, something like that, to get over to the person to try to heal them. And then if you can't get over to them in time, like tactics or anything like that, then yeah, they're dead, and it's kind of like, well, we tried, that kind of thing. But I think that otherwise it's like, yeah, you can. It's going to 0 shouldn't be the end of things, because it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't. I don't like it. Yeah. But give me some time to go heal them, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm. But then
Then
we get into the skills list proper, starting with all access skills, so anybody can go with these. Most of these are passive with a few exceptions. Then we have skills exclusive to sword, lance, and axe, and then skills specifically for dagger and bow. One's for the casting triangle. One's for shining stone. One's for strike, talon, and breath. One's exclusively for staff. One's for if you have the fiend trait. One for the infantry movement type. One for armor movement type. Cavalry, flyer, and the combat arts, each of which have a required charge. Given what we've seen with heroic resources when we've done raw steel, I think a certain house rule I might do is that you have other opportunities to get charged based on your movement type. Like, for example, maybe infantry, if they are next to an ally, they get one charge in addition to the one that they get automatically. This might be trickier for some of the other movement types, but I think there's something there. I do appreciate we're not doing the feat tax thing, but instead have it that prerequisites are usually level based. And I like that one of these strategy options is just called Fire Emblem.
Yes.
And then purchasing and refining. So this is where we have our item shop. As well as the attribute approach when it comes to weapons. And a few example weapons. It's not as robust as the weapon creation that I have, but it's nice. The idea of a though I do like that it's not just shared among the whole trinity, but all three of them have their own their own take to a certain extent, such as basic attributes for lances include things like enchanted defense and resistance, whereas axes have enchanted attack and dexterity. There are a fair amount that are shared, though. I think maybe if we're gonna have individual pages for this sort of thing, maybe some more exclusive attributes, or just have it a shared thing for those kind of triangles. Obviously, for bows and daggers, they definitely have a different attribute spread. And you definitely have a different attribute spread for the casting types. We can see that with just Anima and Lite here. To a point.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, it just kind of...
There's a little bit more overlap than I would have liked. Especially if they're going to be having individual pages. But one thing I noticed that I don't see here, that is a big key thing in Fire Emblem: durability.
Yep.
I don't see the weapon durability thing because if I'm being honest, I've never liked it. I don't like weapon durability in video games or tabletop games.
I was okay with not having the durability in a TTRPG version of Fire Emblem because it just doesn't make as much sense. It's too much stuff to like keep track of, really. Like, in comparison to when you're looking at it in Fire Emblem, you're like, oh, well, I have a flux weapon and I've got this one or this one or this one, and you kind of go through it, and you might have 5 different books on a character, but like you may not need that kind of thing whenever you're in a TTRPG where you have more of the, oh, we need this and this and this instead. Or maybe I'm the only person who puts 5 different books on somebody, but you know.
Then we do have some examples of siege weaponries. So the two base ones are a stone hoist and a magic orb. So it doesn't look like there's much in the way of attributes for them, aside from GM only once.
Or just physical and magical.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could go with the basic ballista, or, you know, you could just drop a fucking meteor on everything.
Okay, Theo.
But
I mean, it's there.
mm-hmm.
It is there.
Yeah, then we have a few preset units. And finally, finally the ending credits and the character sheet proper. With a nice setup here. And that is Heroes of Light. So, based on what you guys saw, what did you think? What did you think of Heroes of Light?
I like it. I think that if I were to run this, because I mean, this is basically something that I tried to do, but I tried to do it in like, if I had this back like about 2 or 3 years ago, whenever I ran a very, very large scale combat, this would have been made it a lot easier, being honest. Because you know, it even says you can have them run, you know, you can make them run armies just like you would in Fire Emblem and stuff, and it makes it just like it makes it a little bit different, and I think it simplifies a larger combat type thing where you can have the armies go up against each other.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this could be good for like PvP type little skirmish games for no other reason than just for laughs. Just to see, you know, whose strategy rules supreme.
Yeah.
I could see you doing that anyway, though. Like, you know, you got your Fire Emblem 3 houses where you were doing skirmishes anyway, and you could do something like that in the game whenever it's like, oh, well, let's just do a little skirmish with each other, and you know, and you could like house brew something like, say you're normally classic rule, but whenever you're doing skirmishes, it's knocked out means that they just get healed off the battlefield, you know, rather than killed. Stuff like that.
Yeah. I recently played a game that was doing Fire Emblem, but semi-roguelike, called Astral Throne. And in that one, instead of individual weapon types, you had these broad styles of weapons. And if I was to tackle doing Fire Emblem in tabletop form, that is the approach I do. Because by having it as styles, it can be interpreted as different weapons. And still have that weapon triangle. I wouldn't need to do that when it comes to the casting options, except for maybe staves, because what you can do with, say, the kind of spells you can do with Anima, Light, or Dark are already pretty broad as is. So there's no...
Yep.
So there's no reason to take that approach. And they in Astral Throne they're referred to as proficiencies. Let me see if I can. So you have light, shield, and heavy weapons, as well as different types of magic like familiar, barrier, focus, and ritual. And light weapons can include something like a dagger or something like a rapier. So there is the option, and familiar magic is just, well, a familiar. But it still is operating on a kind of weapon triangle. It's just not using... it's not using a tree. And I think that's ultimately for the best, because trying to do that sort of advancing class tree approach in a TTRPG creates more problems than it solves, in my opinion. You know, because imagine trying to replicate that kind of thing with, okay, when do you do the advanced classes and the more advanced classes, and how do you account for something like, say, hero or lord classes in Fire Emblem?
Don't know.
Yeah, it's one of those things that would be tricky to figure out.
Or even tactician.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those jack of all trades archetypes. In something like this, I think tactician would just be infantry. And being a hero or being a lord would just be a personal skill instead of a whole ass class. But
yeah, I could definitely see something like that working.
Something that I look at this as a fine foundation, but if I was to run it personally, I would effectively use this as the base to do my own thing, so that I could integrate other class-based tactics RPGs, like say Wild Arms XF or similar games, into this kind of framework. Or even if I want to be extra cheeky, Tactics Ogre.
Sadly, I never got to play that growing up.
Yeah. I know someone is inevitably going to say, does that mean you do Final Fantasy Tactics in this? No, somebody's already done that. And if I'm being honest, I'm not as interested in doing that when so many other people are chasing that.
Yeah, I can see that.
That, and it would mean having to stat out things like Brave and Faith, and I hate that rule.
Unless you're going with something a little more simplistic like Tactics Advance.
But even then, I'd want to try and go for that same kind of setting agnosticism that I've done with Legend Edition. At least to the best I can. It's a little bit trickier when you're emulating tactics RPGs, but I think it is doable. I think the big thing is just dealing with the fact that with a lot of other tactics games, you're not really dealing with mounts. So that's something to address. I could see adding new movement types to account for that, but that's another story entirely. But that will wrap it up for this particular episode of The Valley. We will be back next week with the talent class for Draw Steel. And oh boy, will I have some things to say about Scions and their sordid history in the world's most litigious RPG.
I am looking forward to it.
All I will say on the matter is prepare for bullshit. Because there was a lot of it with that thing. I don't think there's going to be that with the talent, but old wounds. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.
See you on the trail.
Take care.
我所